Hi, my name is Jimmy Hofert. I'm with the town of Flower Mound, and today I'm going to be doing a presentation in regards to urban forestry. So, a lot of people don't understand what an urban forester is. So the quickest way I can explain that to you is through this book. Most of you have probably read this book or actually seen the movie, The Lorax. Well, I'm just like the main character. I'm not orange, I'm not little, but the Lorax, what did he protect? Well, he protected the trees. And the town of Flower Mound values trees for specific reasons. They have a value in regards to shade. They also provide stormwater retention. They also can provide habitat for animals and critters, and they also can give you food. They can supply us with lumber. So there's many resources as to why trees are so valuable to the town of Flower Mound. So today we'll do a presentation as to how we go about taking care of the trees in Flower Mound from when a developer comes into the town. Because when a developer sees a piece of property, they don't value the trees unless the town tells them to. So we have a process for which they have to submit a tree survey to the town, and I'm gonna go walk you through as to what that involves. So first thing is, we have a measuring tape. A lot of you have seen a measuring tape. Mine's a little different because it has a hook on it. That hook goes into the bark of the tree, and then I can walk around the tree and I can measure the circumference and get a idea of how big that tree is around the circumference of the trunk of that tree. Okay? When I do that, that tells me how the size of that tree in relationship to whether it's a protected or if it's a specimen tree. And those are two most important classifications from the town in regards to getting a tree survey done. Once it meets a really large size for that given tree species, it becomes a specimen tree, and then the mitigation for that tree goes up. So this is a most important tool that I use when I'm doing my job, is actually a measuring tool. Okay, so let's talk about trees in regards to other benefits as to how you can identify one species from another. So let's talk about tree identification. That's probably the biggest thing to be able to identify trees within our jobs, to make sure that we're looking at the correct tree from a tree survey standpoint. So we have a couple of things I want to show you, right? We have an acorn. This is a really large acorn for our area. This comes from a bur oak, okay? But if you listen to this, you can hear it rattle. So that's a seed inside the bur oak acorn, okay? If you ever find a tree and you see a lot of acorns on it, then you know it's an oak tree. Every time you see any acorn, it comes from an oak tree. Everybody should be familiar with a pine cone. So if these two are hanging from the same limb or branch on the tree, there's one that's going to have all the seeds still in it and one has all the seeds dropped out. This is clasped, so all the seeds are still in this pine cone, as opposed to this pine cone, all the seeds have fallen out and hit the ground. So some more information about tree ID. All trees have leaves. So we have trees that we've gone and leaf pressed and then laminated. So I'm going to show you three simple tree leaves that you can find anywhere if you go walking around a forested area within Flower Mound. The first one is a blackjack oak. Remember, oaks have acorns, and this is a lobe, 3 lobes, but a lot of times it'll have a point in the center. Then we have a gumbamelia, or another name for it is chitomwood. It looks a lot like a live oak leaf, but this tree actually has thorns on it. And then the last one is a winged elm. And a winged elm is very similar to a cedar elm, except for when it flowers in the springtime. So the last thing that you can use to help utilize for tree ID is bark of a tree. All trees have distinctive bark. So I'm holding up 2 different types of bark. The first one came from a pine tree. The second one came from our most common tree species found in Flower Mound, which is the post oak. These two look nothing alike, so it really helps if you can ID your bark on a tree when you're walking around the forest, because as long as it's still on the tree, that tree typically is alive. versus if you're using fruit or leaves on the tree, they both will fall off the tree a lot of times unless the tree is either maybe an evergreen tree as opposed to a deciduous tree, which loses its leaves in the fall. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is, how do you tell the age of a tree? I get asked this question a lot of times when people say, hey, I have a tree that's about this big, how old is it? I can never really tell that person how old that tree is unless you count the rings. So you can either cut the tree down and tell that person how old the tree is, which I don't think is a very good idea, or you have another option. And the tool you can use is called an increment bore. So a bore looks like a drill bit at the end, except for it has a tiny hole. And as you push this increment bore into the tree and keep twisting and twisting and twisting and get past the center of the tree, it's going to collect a round piece of wood that's going to sit on this inner side portion, and then you can sand that down after you mount it, and then you can count the rings and tell that person how old their tree is instead of having to cut it down.